Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It is almost September of 2022, and I hate it when the machine god does not smile upon me, because I recorded an entire 38-minute long video, only come to find out it didn't pick up any of my audio, which is kind of annoying, by which I mean I wanted to chuck the computer out the window, but, well, it's a lot of disparate pieces, and it was very expensive, and so that ain't happening. So, ladies and gentlemen, we finally got Halo 2 out, and I gotta say, I'm very happy that that video turned out the way it did. Initially, I'd wanted to just kind of, well, shit on the game, saying how this was a failure, that was a failure, but when I looked at it critically, that game is remarkably good for 10 months. Hell, it's remarkably good for, 4 or 5 years of development. Like, there's games that were in development hell for so long that have much less to show for what they did. And so, Halo 2 is an example of a game that, if you look at it in a more positive light, you might find that it is a pretty good game. There's been other reviews where that's happened, like with Blood. Initially, I kind of wanted to just complain about it, but when I started thinking about it critically, it's like, it's not a bad game. It's just really, really difficult. Next month's game review is going to be kind of along those lines, although the game's not that difficult. Batman Arkham Asylum. Longtime fans will know that I reviewed that around the time the game came out, back in 2009. Yeah, getting old. And I hated the game. I don't hate it now, but I don't have... My complaints about it are exactly the same. The big problem with Batman Arkham Asylum is it's just not that impressive of a game. Other games that came out after it would take elements from it that would be really good, such as the detective vision and the brawling, but the game itself is just kind of dull. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but it's not this second coming of Spider-Man kind of thing. It's just a fairly okay Batman game, and many of the other Arkham games are better in many respects, but my biggest problem with Batman Arkham Asylum is it's just not that fun. It really just boils down to beating up thugs over and over again throughout Arkham Asylum. That's really it. The boss fights are really basic. Every boss fight boils down to you beat up a bunch of thugs and do something to the boss. You don't actually fight the boss directly many times. Like with Bane, you just let him smash into stuff. The Joker boss fight is terrible for that. It's just not... The Joker boss fight, you don't even do that. It's very disappointing. Really, I guess the thing about Batman Arkham Asylum is I was really disappointed because I was coming into that game expecting something a lot like Assassin's Creed, where Batman has to go around the city searching for clues, and then at the end of the segment, you find the big villain and defeat him, sort of like how Ezio or Altair would do kind of the same thing. Like, that would work perfectly for a Batman game. But Arkham Asylum, you go from one part of the island to another, beating up thugs, you solve a couple of fairly easy puzzles. The thing about it is, Batman Arkham Asylum, in many cases, would have made for a much better animated movie, because as a game, it's just not that impressive. Other Arkham games would get better, but I never was a big fan of the Arkham series in general. And that's mainly because they're just too dark. Like, why so serious? With superheroes, you really are walking that fine line of, if it's too silly, you can't take it seriously. If it's too serious, you also can't take it seriously. You gotta kind of like be right in the middle. It's gotta have that stylization to where it's still fun. Like Arkham Asylum, Batman's not quite right in my opinion. There's this opinion now that Batman's as crazy as the people he fights, and it's like, that is such bullshit. I wonder if that came from that one interview back in 1989 that Adam West gave, where he said, oh, if you dress up like a bat, you gotta be cuckoo. It's like, well, I mean, if you want to fight criminals and it's not meant to be 100%. The fact is, Batman, in my estimation, cannot be as crazy as the criminals he fights because he doesn't kill anybody. I'm just saying, he doesn't actually kill anybody. Now, the Burton Batman did, but he's not just killing innocent people. There's a big difference between the two, that's for sure. And so, like, Arkham Asylum and the other Arkham games are just so unremittingly dark that it's like, I hate to quote Family Guy, but somebody throw a pie that's not filled with acid that melts somebody's face off. It's just too depressing. And they have this thing where Batman, he can't kill anybody to the point where he'll let hundreds of people die because he can't kill anybody, which is really stupid. I've always hated it where characters like Batman, Superman, and other ones, where like they have this one thing that props them up from being a bad guy. I think that is bullshit. Batman should know that if he leaves the Joker alive, and the worst part is the Arkham Asylum points this out. It's like, Joker's like, take your best shot. It's like, do it, Batman. Save these people. But Batman doesn't. It's like, I didn't like it. I don't like it. I'm not gonna like shit on the game, but I'm gonna explain like how it's really not that great. You can kind of contrast that to the Spider-Man games. In the grand scheme of superhero games, Marvel just dominates compared to DC. Marvel dominates every aspect of gaming. Spider-Man has the best games of all the superheroes. You've got Spider-Man on PS1. You got Spider-Man 2 on PS1, the Inter Electro game. You've got Spider-Man 2, the movie, the game, on the PlayStation 2. You've got Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, Web of Shadows. Then you've got that PS4 game that I've played like the first level of, and it's great. You know, you got these, they're great games because they're fun. They have a light atmosphere. They can get serious here and there, but it's not just unrelenting dark. And there's more stuff going on than just going around an asylum. I know everybody loved the Predator segments in Arkham Asylum, but that's pretty much, it gets old after 1 or 2. They're great, but it's just not much variety in that regard. The Spider-Man games, you could say, are somewhat repetitive, but you've got an entire city to explore. You know, and Spider-Man 1 on PS1, that is a remarkably complex game for that era and for that console. Batman, you know, he solves his puzzles, he does some Predator stuff. It's great, but compared to Spider-Man, it's not as great as you might think. So, yeah, and then, like, Marvel just dominates. You know, I was thinking about this the other day, and it's like, okay, DC has the Arkham games, Batman NES, Batman Returns. I'm not really sure what else. Maybe there's something I'm missing, whereas Marvel, you've got all those great Spider-Man games, you've got Guardians of the Galaxy, you've got Deadpool, and you've even like the budget releases are pretty good. I still need to play this game, but it looks like it's at least passable. Captain America, the Captain America game from like 2009, that looks like a passable video game. Whereas DC, what do you got? Has Superman ever had a good game? Has Green Lantern ever had a good game? I'm trying to think of like other DC characters. As much of a Batman fan as I am, I mainly like Marvel a little bit more. Now these days, both DC and Marvel are equally woke, but whatever. Speaking of Marvel, I did, with some hard-earned overtime, pick up a Iron Man costume. I'll be showing some images of that when it finally comes in. But yeah, it's like, the Marvel games are just so much better. I mean, like Deadpool. I'm going to review Deadpool next year. That is a fun game. It has a great atmosphere. The gameplay's a little generic, but it works. The big problem with Arkham is it's just not fun. It's too serious. And I would love to see a Batman game like Deadpool, where there's some tongue-in-cheek humor now and again. Batman can actually be fun. Batman can be fun. Back in the 70s, Batman was fun. In Batman the Animated Series, he was fun. It's just they kind of lost that with Batman. In addition to that game review, there's going to be 2 more reviews for the year. It's going to be a review of Aliens, the Female War. I reviewed the first 2 Aliens books / comics, but I never got to the Female War, and I'm finally going to do that in October. I'm also going to kind of re-review Aliens, Earth Hive, and Nightmare Asylum, because it's been many years since I've actually talked about them, and I want to talk about them again with a more modern review style. Aliens had good potential to become a legitimate franchise, as complex as Star Wars or Star Trek. They were really laying down in the early 90s a universe that could be more than just Ellen Ripley and the Xenomorph. Sadly, after Aliens Earth War / Female War, the other writers never really went with it. It was just aliens attack, everybody dies. Aliens attack, everybody dies. And now in the modern era, aliens attack, everybody dies. The most complex I've seen so far is Aliens or Alien Legion, where like this colony ship crashes on a planet. The kids somehow develop medieval technology despite having access to, technological readouts, and they got to use like medieval technology to defeat the xenomorphs. That's something different. That's the most complex we've had in many years. But pretty much the story is aliens attack, everybody dies. Really, they had to develop more than that. If you want an expanded universe, and believe me, you want an expanded universe, you got to have more. You got to go beyond the initial premise. Star Wars did exactly that and was very successful. And speaking of, I'm going to be reviewing Star Wars Legacy. Initially, I hated it, but I reread it, and I absolutely adore that series. Star Wars Legacy is a comic series chronicling the events about 100 years after A New Hope. And it's really quite good. I gotta say, when it comes to Star Wars, there were many missteps with the EU. It's not as bad as people say it is. Like, oh, there's a new super weapon every week. It wasn't that bad. There was the Sun Crusher. There was the Darksaber. That was like at most 4 fucking books, okay? It wasn't a bunch of super weapons. Hell, one of the earliest Star Wars books was introducing a whole new alien species with like evil soul-sucking technology that puts souls into robots. That was awesome. But yeah, it's just like Star Wars had such potential that was kind of squandered towards the end of it. And then obviously with Disney, it's just completely ruined. But Star Wars Legacy, it introduces the character of Cade Skywalker, which is Luke Skywalker's great-grandson. He's kind of a fuck-up, and the whole comic series is him trying to come to the light, and it's really compelling. I'm also going to be reviewing Legacy War, which kind of finishes up the Cade Skywalker plotline, and then Legacy 2, which is just a few issues, I think it's like 12 issues, which introduces Han Solo's great-granddaughter. I forget her name. I think it's like Alana, but that could be Darth Cadeas's daughter. I don't remember exactly. KK ripped off everything from Legacy. The character of Rey comes from Legacy 2. Finn comes from Legacy 2. Much of the plot comes from Legacy 2. It is ridiculous. But I'm reviewing all those issues. I'm not going to review each one individually, but I'm going to be talking about the storylines and things of that nature. I might point out one thing here or there, but I'm really looking forward to doing that because I love talking about Star Wars. I was originally going to do it in-universe, dressed up as the Mandalorian. Not going to do that because it's just going to take too much time that I do not have. Next year, I really want to review some superhero games. As I said earlier, Spider-Man 1 for PS1, Deadpool, and then Guardians of the Galaxy. I want to do all those just because they're really good games. I haven't really reviewed that many superhero games. I think it's just Batman. Also, I think in 2023, I might also get back to doing role-playing games. Just haven't had enough time. Also going to be reviewing Halo 3. Finally close out that trilogy. Okay, so moving on to media that I recommend. Been finding a lot of really good books. Most notably, Shadows of Mindor. Shadows of Mindor came out around 2012, if I'm not mistaken, and I completely ignored it because by that point, I really hated where the EU had gone. But like with a lot of latter-day Star Wars books, it's really fucking good. It's just kind of a simple good versus evil sort of thing. It's also a character study of Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Princess Leia. There is a scene. This is kind of a spoiler, so if you don't want to be spoiled, just stop listening now. But basically, Princess Leia is being mind raped, and she's able to maintain her sanity by focusing on her love for Han Solo. Holy fucking shit. You would never see that today. It was really quite good. Also, the Mandalorian showed up, gotta represent. And Han Solo kind of takes the piss out of him. Lando Calrissian is super awesome. Just the whole book is great. Matthew Stover is the one who wrote it, and he's one of the best Star Wars writers. My 4th favorite after Timothy Zahn, Karen Travis, and Michael Stackpole. 4th favorite. He actually made Revenge of the Sith good when he wrote that novel. He's one of the reasons why I like Revenge of the Sith as much as I do. So really recommend Shadows of Mindor. It's Luke Skywalker taking down not a Sith, but something even worse. And then moving on from Star Wars, we've got Judge Dredd. I've been reading a lot of Judge Dredd shit. If you've never gotten into Judge Dredd, it's kind of like getting into 40K, except it's on Earth, and it's a little weirder than 40K in some elements. It's like Judge Dredd is not some sort of space policeman story. Oh no, it's a full-fledged comic series, or comic universe, where you've got alternate universes, you've got ghosts, demons, necromancers, all kinds of crap. And in addition to that, you have authoritarianism versus freedom versus protest movements and stuff like that. All that exists within Judge Dredd. It's really great. There is a Judge Dredd comic and novel I cannot recommend if you like really kind of dark stuff. I'm not a big fan of dark stuff, but this really worked pretty well. There's a villain in Judge Dredd called Judge Death. His name legitimately is Judge Death. Another thing about Judge Dredd, it is satire. So you do have an undead revenant that wants to wipe out all life in the universe named Judge Death. His name is Sidney Death. It's kind of silly, but whatever. The comic is called Fall of Dead World. It's, I think, like 3 different volumes about how Judge Death literally kills all life on his planet. It's really... The art is kind of demented, and the story is kind of like the triumph of the human spirit over, like, impossible odds. Because, like, some humans do survive, and it's really good. The novel is written by Matt Smith, and it's kind of the same thing. It's 3 little novellas, and each novella is kind of like darker than the last, but it has kind of a glimmer of hope at the ending. And then I recommend Judge Dredd Year One, both the comic and the novel. The novel's a little better than the comic. The comic is one of those dimension hopping things where Judge Dredd has to figure out why the juvies are going insane. It's not that great, but Judge Dredd Year One is, once again, 3 novellas in one book, and the first one is Judge Dredd trying to take down some drug dealers, and it's much more complex than that. It's really cool. The second one is a gun runner trying to get his revenge, and there's a backdrop of like a Death Race 2000 sort of thing. And the third one is from Armand Asante, a.k.a. Rico Dredd's perspective, and it's all about a heist. So it's pretty good. The Judge Dredd comics, I got 3 that I recommend. Judge Dredd America, that's apparently the most infamous of them all. It's where it showcases how bad the judge system really is for Mega City 1 by showing them beating up pro-democracy protesters. But they kind of make it a little gray by showing the pro-democracy protesters kind of being like Antifa and killing people and stuff like that. So it's like, who's really the bad guy here? Or maybe it's a bit of both. The third comic in that little miniseries actually has the daughter of a character killed in the first comic trying to solve her own mother's death, which is really neat. And then a comic that is much less heavy than America, Judgment Day. Basically, evil necromancer wants to kill everybody on the earth. And Judge Dredd and Stronum Dog, that guy, has to team up to fight him. Pretty good comic. Very nice, simple, good versus evil sort of thing. And then, last but not least, the Dredd sequel comics. I haven't read them all, but the Dredd sequel comics take place in the Dredd movie universe. Dredd came out in 2010, kind of retooled the universe to make it a little simpler, a little less crazy. And the Dredd sequel comics, I think there's like 4 or 5. I only read 1, and that's where Judge Death shows up. He's like this bioorganic thing that wants to like merge universes. It's pretty good. It's not the best, but it's a cool sequel nonetheless. Then we've got another comic, but not a Judge Dredd comic. I'm not a big fan of like Marvel or DC monthly issues because it's hard to tell like what the fuck is going on. But I discovered a really good miniseries, a 9-issue miniseries called Superior Iron Man. I will admit I looked it up only because I bought the Superior Iron Man armor. Found it for a very good price. It's really cool because it's this chrome and blue thing. But the comic is really, really good. Like, I just was like on the edge of my seat reading that fucking thing. So in recent years, we've had the evil superhero, or a established superhero shown evil. It was made famous by Injustice: Gods Among Us, the video game. It's god awful. Okay, the video game is probably good. I don't know. I haven't played it. I have it, but I haven't played it. I read like the 5 comic series, Injustice Year 1 through 5, but it's terrible. It's so poorly written. It's like, basically, it's Superman is evil because Lois Lane gets killed by the Joker. I really hate that because that implies that Superman has no morals, has nothing but his love for Lois Lane. If Lois Lane dies, he becomes evil. And that's bullshit. Superman should be Superman regardless of whether or not Lois Lane is alive. The other thing about that is they kind of changed this Superman a little bit so that people couldn't complain. It's like, well, it's not really Superman. Then why call him Superman? Why just call him, Omni-Man? How about that? Omni-Man has nothing to do with Superman other than being a fucking alien. I really hate that. It's like, it's also like with Homelander. It's like, ooh, that's an evil Superman. Except he has none of the character traits of Superman. And Injustice Superman has none of the character traits of the real Superman. Really, if you want an evil Superman, a real evil Superman, Soviet Superman, Communist Superman is what an evil Superman would be. He's not outright just lasering people, but he's taken away freedom from the entire planet. That's what a real evil Superman would do. But they turn they have Injustice Superman go from normal Superman to Omni-Man / Homelander in like 2 seconds, and it's bullshit. And then you got the stupid thing of like, ooh, Team Batman versus Team Superman. Let's see, Superman's a psychopathic killer, Batman isn't. Guess which one I chose? It is shit. The Superior Iron Man comic series. It's a 9-issue comic series that introduces evil Iron Man. He's the same Tony Stark you know and love, only he's a colossal dick. He's not out there lasering people with repulsor blasts, even people that try to shoot him in the face. Instead, he invents this virus called the Extremist virus that will make people look really attractive, fix ailments for only $99 a day. Dickish, but he's not killing anybody. He gives Daredevil his sight back if Daredevil will come on his side, but he doesn't kill Daredevil or capture him or anything until later in the comic. It doesn't try to kill him even then. And Daredevil kind of loses focus later on in the miniseries. He befriends a villain instead of killing him and tries to help him, but more for selfish reasons. He's still, apparently in that continuity, Happy Hogan dies for some reason. I don't know. And Tony Stark legitimately mentions like, oh yeah, I legitimately cared about that guy and I'll try to help, people who knew him. It's like, that's still Tony. And that's the thing. The major conflict does the whole Team Batman, Team Superman a lot better because there's a backup copy of Tony Stark's personality that's more like the traditional Tony Stark fighting against the new evil Tony Stark. And it's great because there's actual moral ambiguity. It's not just, here's the bad guy, here's the good guy. Marvel has actually been able to make fairly complex stories way back in the day, of course. We're talking like back in the 80s, 90s, and somewhat in the early 2000s. DC has kind of done the same thing, but when it comes to Marvel, I've been a much bigger fan of Marvel to a certain extent than DC. I've been a big Batman fan, but like my list of top superheroes is primarily Marvel characters, because you got Batman, and then you immediately have Spider-Man, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Rogue. That is my top 5 favorite comic book characters, and most of those are X-Men. So, yeah. I really recommend Superior Iron Man. It does the whole, Injustice thing so much better. Moving right along, I discovered a random sci-fi universe on Amazon called Titanborn, and I cannot remember who wrote it. It's Bruno something or other. Basically, it's set in the future, but it actually has some really good development without giant info dumps. Basically, an asteroid the size of the UK slammed to the Earth and killed most of the population, but 300 years later, everybody's kind of rebuilt and now spreading out in the solar system. And the main character is called a corporate collector. He gets bounties to go capture people, stop strikes and stuff like that. He's kind of a villain, and he gets up into some really cool adventures. I've only read one of his adventures. It's a short story called The Collector. And that story gets fucked up at the end. Here's a bit of a spoiler. Basically, he's like trying to track down like this heir to a corporation that went rogue, and this guy, the heir, gets picked up by this mad scientist, and the mad scientist, it looks like he's creating robots, but he's really lobotomizing people. It's fucking gross, and I basically like turning people into Frankensteins. It was awesome. So I do recommend reading it. I haven't read any other books yet, but it's off to a pretty good start. And then we got Gaunt's Ghosts, Victory 1. Gaunt's Ghosts has been going on since 1999. I never really liked Gaunt's Ghosts. I found it kind of dull. Gaunt's Ghost stars Ibram Gaunt, a Colonel Commissar of the Tanith First and Only. The Tanith are like scouts. And the books mainly deal with like the conflicts inside the regiment. They're fighting in the Sabbat worlds where chaos has taken over, you know, a lot of these planets. They've got the Blood Pact, which is basically a formal military of chaos, if that makes sense. The big difference between like the Blood Pact and regular Imperial Guard is the webbing is made out of human flesh. Kind of gross, but it's chaos. I never really got into it. I just didn't really like the characters very much, but I decided to give Victory 1 a try. And Victory 1 is one of those interesting postscript books. It's like the series kind of ended, but Dan Abnett wants to make some more money, so he's going to make something that takes place after the last book. And it's good. I only ever read the first 3 books, and Victory 1's great. It's basically 3 novellas. I guess that's how books in the UK are being written now or something. Because it's 3 little novellas that make up a whole book. Why not just make it 1 book? It starts off with Gaunt trying to get back in the saddle. The second book is them getting ready to go on a mission. And the third book has them going after like a scrapyard Death Star. It's really great. Got a lot of great characters. It's not that hard to follow, but there are a lot of characters. And so it's kind of hard to tell who's doing what. It's like, oh, this guy died. Oh, that guy, not him. It's still worth reading. If you're not a Gaunt's Ghost fan, I'd still kind of say give it a try. You don't really need to know the continuity. Like, if you did know, a lot of the in-jokes would make more sense, but even if you don't, still a pretty good military sci-fi read with a lot of good characters. Even the Space Marines get some good characterization. And then last but not least, we go back to Judge Dredd. We've got Judge Anderson. So Judge Anderson showed up in the Dredd movie. She's the hot blonde that has, like, the mind powers. And the Judge Anderson book follows her first year as being a psychic judge. Judge Anderson Year 1 is way better than Judge Dredd Year 1. Judge Dredd Year 1 is a fairly basic shoot 'em up book, whereas the stakes in Judge Anderson Year 1 are way higher. Like ridiculously higher. Like, she's taken down, like, these psychic criminals that are, like, trying to kill everybody. The first book has, well, once again, when I say book, it's 3 novellas in 1 book for some reason. The first novella has her trying to take down this serial killer that's killing a bunch of people at this thing called the Meat Market, which is basically online dating. Then she's got to take down, in the second novella, she has to go into, like, Arkham Asylum and take down, like, this freedom protester, aka Antifa, that's trying to wipe out the whole city. And it has a very kind of twist ending to it, which is really quite good. And then the final one has her going after this mutant that, like, enters people's dreams and takes their life force. It's really good. If you want, like, a female character who is not a Mary Sue, Judge Anderson is it. Let's see what else we got here, ladies and gentlemen. Cosplay. I'm very tempted to make some cosplay videos. Just because it is a really fun hobby to get into, and it's not as expensive as you might otherwise think. If you know where to shop and know how to shop, you can get a lot of these really elaborate costumes for cheap. And if you have really good artistic skills, like if you can sew, it's even cheaper than that. If you've got a 3D printer, it's even cheaper than that. I don't really know how to do any of that, and I've been able to get these costumes for pretty inexpensive. It just requires a bit of creativity. I went to a con not too long ago called well, I say not too long ago. As of this recording, it was like a couple days to ConroCon. Had no idea it even existed. Picked me up that awesome Mandalorian flag because the Mandalorians are awesome. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, another month comes to a close, and I'm going to wish you good Superior Iron Man, Fall of Dead World, or whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.